I want to bring in retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. He's also a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Admiral, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Admiral, as you know, the United States is carrying out these operations in the Caribbean, and it appears that they may have killed civilians in the conduct of this operation. Is that legal?
This is a very challenging legal question. I think the Trump administration puts forward two arguments, both of which I'm not sure stand up, to scrutiny. The first is they argue that like in the 2001 authorization to use military force against al-Qaeda, if al-Qaeda was carrying explosives to the United States, we would strike them. That Tren de Aragua, the cartel that was supposedly on this boat, is a foreign terrorist organization. It was bringing something that would damage U.S. personnel, people, the public, drugs, and therefore they're a legitimate target. Very few lawyers, international lawyers, would find that compelling. The Trump administration then says, well, if that's not true, then under my broad Article 2 requirements to defend the interests of the United States, I can do this attack. The only problem is from President Biden on back, including Trump 45, we treated terrorist narco trafficking and criminal organizations like this as criminals who had due process rights. And this kind of strike is obviously not a due process right. And I worry greatly that we don't know who each of these 11 people were. I'm confident there was drugs on that boat. I'm confident there were bad people on that boat, maybe even Tren de Aragua, foreign terrorist organization, designated people on that boat. But I can't tell you all 11 were, and I'm not sure the person executing the strike can tell you that. That's when you start to stand into danger.
Right, because if the shoe were on the other foot, if a foreign country struck at a U.S. vessel with American citizens on board, suggesting that they were doing something nefarious, we would want to know what the proof is and what that due process was before they carried out that attack. It doesn't strike me as any different in this case, given especially our laws and our Constitution. The last week, as you know, the President of the United States changed the name of the Defense Department to the Department of War. And I want to play a soundbite for you and get your reaction to it. This is how Secretary Hegseth described it. Listen.
We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise.
Okay, all of us, Americans, always want our military to operate with maximum lethality if they are engaged in armed conflict with an enemy. But the notion of tepid legality, when it comes to, for example, as you mentioned, due process, that's what I'm sort of curious about from your perspective. Tepid or not, it's still illegal if that's what our courts decide. You may not agree with the law. You may think it's tepid or flaccid, but it's still the law. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I think the fact that they pulled down the brief that they were going to give Congress on Friday, explaining what they did, a classified brief, no less, explaining what they did, tells you that they know their story isn't going to play well right now. So my gut reaction is this is a tough legal case to make. And as far as, I don't need a Secretary of Defense that can rhyme. What you really need is a Secretary of Defense that makes sure we're buying the right amount of equipment, doing the right amount of things. I think that's where Secretary Hegseth should be concentrating his efforts, not on renaming, billets and offices in this case, but instead making sure we have the right military budget for the missions in front of us.
It's an excellent point. I want to switch gears before I let you go, Admiral. West Point just canceled recently an event that was set to honor Tom Hanks with one of its most prestigious civilian awards so that it could focus more on preparing cadets for the future. Obviously, for people who may not be aware, Tom Hanks, who has done so much to bring attention to the greatest generation with films like Saving Private Ryan and documentaries documenting our armed forces and men and women in combat who have served and ultimately who paid the ultimate sacrifice. What do you make of this sort of what appears to be sort of retribution for maybe perhaps his political positions?
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So what I'd say is Tom Hanks is a good friend of the military. Military officers like myself watched his movies. We understood what a great recruiting tool they were for us. He pushed forward the strongest, most positive images of particularly the United States Army over the last 30 years in movies. And, his movie Destroyer was a great discussion about Navy ships in combat in World War II. So he really was a great advocate for the military, a great recruiter. This isn't a West Point issue. This is a Secretary of Defense issue. And this is about, canceling an award for someone who earned it, deserved it. All you need to do is read the announcement, the original comments when he was put forward for the award, and it was first informed to everybody he was going to receive it. Clearly, he has been a great contributor to the United States military. He was an obviously qualified recipient for this award from the Alumni Association, and it's disappointing that they pulled the rug out from underneath this event.
Yeah, and I wasn't a U.S. Military Academy cadet, but I was an ROTC cadet. And even in my very first military science class, that was drummed into our heads that the military was meant to be apolitical. We're just the instruments of politicians. But we ourselves, the military, does not take any kind of political positions, especially the leadership. So is this troubling you that we now see an increased politicization of our military, starting with the secretary?
I worry about this, almost not the politicization, but the idea of there's some kind of perfect ethos or model. I was ROTC as well. I learned the same lessons you did, and then 32 years on active duty, I saw that in practice. And I'll tell you, the kind of wanton firing of senior female officers in the Navy from their command leadership positions has been completely inappropriate. It sends the wrong message to the 25% of incoming officers in every year group that are women officers in the Navy, that you're not valued, that you're not needed, that mommy shouldn't be in the military or shouldn't be in combat. That's the kind of message being transmitted from the Secretary of Defense. It was in his book, it's in his actions, and it's totally inappropriate.
Admiral Mark Montgomery, thank you for your service, sir, and thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.